My name is Erin Carranza, and I am the co-founder of Transformation through Reunification.
And
And
we
we
have an
have an
announcement for
announcement
you
for
guys
you guys
today.
today.
And I'd
And
like to
I'd like to
introduce
introduce
my
my
co-founder,
co-founder,
Ryan
Ryan
Hamilton.
Hamilton.
Hello, how's everybody doing today?
All right.
All right,
So
so
big things
big
have been
things have been
happening. We've been
happening. We've
doing
been doing
things.
things.
Yeah, so what we wanted to do today was just tell you a little bit about something that we've been working on for a while now. This has been kind of a pet project of both of ours. It's called, and basically what it is that we are starting a new nonprofit, and it's called Transformation through Reunification. And it will be a nonprofit that is dedicated to helping families whose children are in foster care uh, to get the services that they need in order to be able to reunite with their kids. So we're planning on being able to offer reunification coaching, supervised monitoring, and mental health services to families who are really struggling. And I want to kind of give Erin a chance to talk about it, um, because she was the one that had decided like where we were going to go and what area we're planning on servicing. And so I wanted to kind of just turn that over to her and give her a chance to just discuss that part.
So
So
most
most
of
of
you
you
know
know
if
if
you've
you've
been
been
following my
following my
journey. My
journey, my
daughter
daughter
was
was
illegally
illegally
seized
seized
without a
without a
warrant
warrant
based
based
on
on
false
false
allegations
allegations
by my
by my
ex-husband.
ex-husband.
He did
He
this
did
to
this to
control
control
custody,
custody,
alimony,
alimony, and
child
child
support.
support.
And
And
in
in
dependency
dependency
court,
court,
they
they
just
just
picked up
picked
the
up
allegations and ran
and
with
ran
it.
with it.
It didn't
It didn't
matter
matter
what
what
proof or documentation
documentation
I provided to
to
show that he
that
was
he
being
was being
untruthful.
untruthful.
So I
So
had
I
to go
went
through
through
the
the
whole
whole
process
process
of
of
dependency
dependency
court.
court.
And
And
I noticed that
that
reunification
reunification
is
is
never
never
in the
in the
plan
plan
of the
of the
county.
county.
So
So
my visits
visits
were
were
tailored to
tailored
my
to my
child.
child.
I
I
wanted
wanted
to
to
encapsulate her
encapsulate
in
her
this little
in this
world,
little world,
and every
and
visit was a
was a
themed
themed
visit.
visit.
I was not going to let them break my bond with my child, which is what it's intended to
To
do. They throw
throw
you
you
into a
into a
dirty
dirty
off,
off and
and
say, have a good visit. And in my opinion, that is the most important part of your case. The time that you are in your supervised visitation is when they decide whether or not they're going to allow you to keep your child, or if they're going to up your visits or take them down or go to unsupervised, go to overnight visits. And I noticed that there was a need for that. Nobody told me anything. Nobody told me to bring snacks. You can cook with your children. You can eat with your children. It's considered bonding. They can't tell you no. Um, so once out of dependency court, I got thrown into having to um, pay a monitor to supervise me and my daughter. Even though I left dependency court with my custody intact, 50-50 custody, I left in good standing, good mental health reports. No, there was no ever anything negative. But seems to me that family court tends to err on the side of caution, and that always ends up being bad, honestly, for the victim of um I don't know how I would call it, being fucked over by dependency court by the county there. But the supervised monitors can break your make or break your case, and a lot of them are just there for the money. They get paid very well, and their reports get submitted to the court. And if you have one bad moment with your child where your child doesn't want to listen, or they're acting out, they don't want to leave, uh, it gets put into a report, it gets submitted to the court, and that could affect your custody. And I didn't want that to happen. Parents have gone through enough in dependency court to then get out of dependency court, go to the family court, and then have to pay money to see your child for whatever it is, 2 hours a week, 4 hours a week, supervised. And you should not have to decide whether you're going to pay your car note or your rent or see your baby. And so while I was in dependency court, I was specializing in supervised visits. I teach parents how to have really good visits, how to present into court. And then I got out of dependency court with my custody intact. And then I noticed what was happening with supervised visitation. And that's when I came to Brian, was like, I got to do something more. We have to do something more. You shouldn't have to not spend time with your child because you can't afford to pay these monitors 150 an hour, 75 an hour plus travel time. And then if they don't like you, they write up a terrible report and then you can potentially lose custody. And so this is what we're doing. And I moved to Lake Arrowhead for my son's health. My daughter's also up there, but my son has bilateral pulmonary fibrosis, and we had to get out of LA County, so we moved to Lake Arrowhead. And I noticed that people are driving from Big Bear and even further down the mountain to see their children. And CPS has run rampant up there, and I decided that this was a good place to start with doing our doing our work to help parents stay connected, to keep your bond with your child, to be able to see your child. Um, and there's a need for services, there's a need for transportation, there's a need. The family court system, in my opinion, is designed to keep you from your child and just to keep taking money from you. There's times that I couldn't afford to see my daughter, and so I didn't get to see her. And you're not allowed to say, "Oh, I can't afford to see you this week." So they don't tell your children anything. And I've said it 100 times and I'll continue to say it. You should not have to decide whether you're going to eat, pay your car note or your rent, or see your baby.
And just to kind of add to some of the things that Aaron has talked about is that I'm a therapist, and so I've been working with families, a lot of them who are struggling. I work for a nonprofit called Life Source Affordable Counseling, and what I was seeing was that I would see um, parents who were coming in, who were coming in to do court-ordered therapy, individual therapy, or co-parenting classes, or parenting classes, or addiction recovery. Um, and it was because of the fact that their kids had been taken away. And as I was working with them, I would be talking with them, and they would be telling me, like, these are the things that I have to do for my case plan. I've completed my case plan. I've turned in all the paperwork that they want from me, um, and um, and I'm about to go into court and lose my kids. They're about ready to take away my parental rights for things that, like, it just seemed like almost absurd. Things that, like, that the like an ex-partner was doing. And they were like, well, we don't feel that the child is safe in your custody because of what they're doing. And they're not with with the partner anymore. They've, maybe even filed a restraining order. They maybe done, they've done all of these things that that they've been asked to do by the courts, and they're still about ready to lose their kids. And I've even seen situations too where they've lost their jobs because they now have a criminal mark on their record, or a criminal record, because their kids were taken away, even though they didn't do anything themselves that was illegal. They may have been the ones who were victims of domestic violence, and now they have that mark on their record, and so now
That
they can't keep their job.
That
that
happened to
happened to
me.
me.
My
My
ex
ex
filed a
filed a
restraining
restraining
order
order
behind my
behind my
back,
back,
was
was
continuing to
continuing
have
to have
sex with
sex with
me.
me until I was served by the sheriff. And when you have a restraining order against you, it severely affects your ability to get a job. You cannot keep a job if they find out that you have a restraining order, you'll lose it. Um, the person that gets the restraining order against you doesn't have to pay you child support or alimony because it's against the laws to pay your abuser money. So a lot of times abusers will get a restraining order just so they can get out of their fiduciary duties and control custody. And that's what happened to me. And once you have a restraining order put in place, they treat you like you are the worst person in the entire world. They will refuse to listen to anything you say. It's very hard to get anywhere. And then with the court ordered services, I was doing probably around 40 hours a week of services to get my child back. What kind of employer is going to let a person off to do domestic violence, random drug testing, parenting, therapy? Luckily, I was able to get a job with Mr. Davis, and he gave me a job, and I am forever grateful for him. But he knew what it was like to be in dependency court, random drug test. You have to be here in 30 minutes, or you lose your child. You have to take this parenting class that starts at 9 in the morning on a Tuesday. And if you don't get in, then you have to wait for that to come all the way back around 12 more weeks, and then you lose your children. It is completely set up for
Parents to
parents to
fail.
fail.
Yeah, and that was what I was starting to see with these clients of mine, was that they were just struggling to get it done. They'd lost their jobs, they'd lost any income, they were losing the support of their families because the families are like, well, it was only supposed to take like 6 months, and now it's been like a year and a half. Like, when are you going to get your kids back? Like, what are you doing? And and that's because the 6 month mark is about like that's the minimum, but it can take 2 to 5 years to get your kids back.
You will never get your children back in 6 months unless you have a damn good private attorney.
It you
You
will
will
be
be
in
in
there a
there a
minimum of
minimum of
18
18
months
months
because
because
that's
that's
where they
where
get
they
their
get their
funding, and
funding,
they
and
need
they
to
need to
keep you
keep
in
you
there
in
as
there as
long as
long as
possible.
possible. So they will do everything they can to keep you from completing your services, from having to start over, missing your appointments, changing your appointments, scheduling your visitation for when you can't make it. Most people don't know that when you have supervised visitation, the county is supposed to schedule it in a place that is close to you because it is your visit, not the other parent. So if you live in Pomona and the other person lives in Riverside, your visit should be at least in Pomona or halfway near. They're supposed to be accommodating you, and they never do. They always make it extremely hard for you to reunify with your children.
And so that's actually what made me reach out to Erin, was because I still don't remember how it was that we connected on Facebook, but I started seeing her post about
Well, first of all, we went to high school together.
yes, we went to high school together. Yes, I knew that part, but but I wasn't sure how we connected on Facebook because we didn't really know each other that well in high school.
You had a client
Yeah, and
that
yeah, and so
needed help.
that's why I contacted her, because I saw that she was doing reunification services for families whose children had been taken into foster care, and I was like, I don't know what to do right now because you know and so she introduced me to Vince and basically tried to, um, got me on his show for a little while. And I started really hearing the other stories. And then I had people starting to seek me out for therapy because they were running in to these insane situations. And they didn't know who else to turn to. And they were just feeling like everybody, um, was looking at everything in the most negative possible light. And so I started educating myself on on these issues, and trying to understand, what was happening in the courts, and what was happening from an attachment theory level, which we can get into in a minute. And just realizing, like, oh my gosh, this is an epidemic, where families are getting their children taken away, and and they have done nothing wrong. And so when Aaron started talking to me around that time about this idea of the nonprofit that she wanted to put together, I was really interested in what she had to say, because she was saying that, like, as this is my recollection of the conversation, was that, like, she would go into these facilities to visit with her child, with her daughter, and in a lot of cases the facility was just like an empty room, with nothing there, and so she was having to bring in like activities for her daughter, and trying to figure out, like, what are we going to do this week, and so she wanted to provide a facility that could give uh um yes, we're in the same room right now, that could give uh families an opportunity to, have toys and activities that they could do with their children, and being able to give them some, like, um, other services that would help them be able to have those successful supervised visitations. And the other thing that I was really adamant about, and this is where the attachment theory comes in, is that a lot of times parents would go in and they would have these visitations with their kids, and um, the children were reacting in a way, like, after this visitation they would be really angry, and maybe even violent with their foster family, and the supervised monitors, and the caseworkers were interpreting this as them reliving the trauma of being with their parents. And really what was happening, and this is what we see in attachment theory, is that when there has been that kind of an attachment disruption for that long period of time, that's how kids react when they reunite with their parents. They're going back through the attachment disruption trauma, and they're missing their parents. And because kids are like 4, 5, 6, they don't have the ability to say, "Well, I'm really missing my mother, and that's why I'm feeling angry right now." They just act it out, and so and they don't really understand the situation, and so they may be, looking at the foster family as the ones that are keeping their parents from them, and so they react to them in a violent way. Or it would be a situation where they're like anxiously attached to their parents and screaming and crying when they're leaving, and afraid that they're not going to come back. And again, this would be looked at as a negative on the part of, like, the social workers and the caseworkers. And so it was my thought is that when we start, like, if we start this nonprofit together, we want to make sure that we get our supervised monitors trained up on attachment theory so that they can understand that this is not them reliving the trauma of living with their parents. This is them reliving the trauma of that attachment, and
Of
that's
being away from their parents. And you're not allowed to tell your children why they're not with mommy and daddy, which is absurd to me. So you expect a child to be literally ripped away from their parent, thrown in with strangers, thrown into an office room with their mother and their father and their only sense of security and stability, and then expect them not to act out when your 2 hours is done and they have to go back home to strangers?
Yeah, and so that was something that, and I really felt strongly that, in addition to the supervised visitations, that families needed those mental health services, because a lot of times those parents, they felt a lot of shame. They didn't have, they've lost their support network, because everybody's looking at the situation and thinking, well, you must have done something wrong. And the reality is that so many of these families and so many of these individuals have done nothing wrong. They were the victims of domestic violence themselves. They had, or just simply, were in poverty. And so their children were taken away because they, couldn't dress them in the newest clothes anymore. And so there might be, like, the clothes might be tattered or frayed, and and issues like that. Or, situations where they might have been recovering from surgery, something else happened, that didn't have anything to do with them, but they just happened to be kind of in the crossfire. They took a drug test, and they failed the drug test because they were on the pain medications to recover from the surgery, and um, so they were picked up for like methamphetamine or something like that, and their kids were taken away just because of something like that.
So I wanted to answer Stella's question. She said, "So I finished my case plan and I still have 2 hours. Why did the father get unsupervised visits?" So that is exactly what happened to me. I finished my case plan and I was not getting unsupervised visits. I was not getting monitored. Oh, you need to request your delivered service logs. So those are like inter-office communications between your caseworker, foster home, group home, minors council, county council, your caseworkers, everybody that touches your case has to write down what's going on in your delivered service logs, and they must give them to you. You get a better idea of what's happening in your case when you get your delivered service logs. But what I noticed is the reason that I didn't get unsupervised visitation and my husband did was because they did not like me. They didn't like me. They did not like that I didn't take their shit. Now, I wasn't rude. One time I told my caseworker to fuck off, but that's another story. Don't tell your caseworker to fuck off. So,
Good tip, good legal tip there.
yeah, just so you know. Well, my husband had a babysitter that was driving around my daughter while smoking weed and driving her back and forth to the visits. Um, they were trying to protect the babysitter, and I said, I don't give a fuck about the babysitter, and I don't give a fuck what you say. This woman is getting high and driving my daughter to visitation. Now, I lost my child because I attempted to take my own life. My husband called CPS on me instead of trying to get me help. CPS came into my life 33 days after my suicide attempt, and I had already been in therapy with all of my children. I had done EMDR, I had volunteered at shelters. I had done everything that I needed to do to be a mother because of me, not because anybody ordered it. But CPS came in and they liked my husband better than they liked me. And so he got away with a lot more than I did. And I never was given unsupervised visitation because I pushed back, because I asked questions, because I didn't let them just walk all over me. And if you get your delivered service logs, you will see that each visit is documented. I mean, it was so detailed that they knew when I switched perfume or when I was wearing a different pair of stilettos. They detailed everything. So there's also exculpatory evidence in there. So I will put up the form here once I figure it out. There's a form you can fill out to request them. They're yours. You have a right to them. So get your delivered service logs,
and
and
you
you
have
have
to
to
stop
stop
communicating with
communicating with
them
them
in
in
person.
person.
Everything is
Everything
in
is in
writing,
writing,
email, or
email or
text
text
message.
message.
Um, and
And
be
be
as
as
I don't know
I don't
how
know
to
how to
say
say
this.
this. As
Squeaky wheel is
rude
what
as
I
you
usually
can.
call.
I be as rude as you can, as politely as you can.
Mhm.
Like,
And I
But
would
don't
say
give
what,
them an inch.
yeah,
be
But be
nice
nice
about
about it.
yeah, what I would say is try to be assertive, which is basically along the lines of like, is just saying that like I haven't heard from you. I wanted to, it could be something like this, like, hello, how are you? I
Right.
hope you're doing well. I haven't
Why
heard
am I
from you
not
about
getting more time?
this. I would like to understand what's going on here. Can you please get back to me? Right. Being polite about it, but being assertive about it, and,
Right.
and recognizing, a situation where if you're not getting a response back, being able to say to them, like, I still haven't heard from you. And it's been 24 hours. My understanding is that if I don't hear from you within 24 hours, I do have the right to contact your supervisor. So I want to just let you know that I am giving you that opportunity. If I haven't heard from you, I am going to contact your supervisor and just see what's going on with my children. Being that squeaky wheel, being the one that's saying, going and saying over and over and over and over again, I want to have time with my kids. I want
I
to,
want my child. You
yeah.
shouldn't have to be like, excuse me,
I would
I
like
would
more
like more
time with
time
my
with my
child,
child,
please.
please.
But
But
in your
in your
case
case plan,
plan, there
there
is
is
certain
certain
milestones that
milestones
you
that you have to meet, which they don't tell you about, by the way. So you have to meet these unrealistic standards that you don't know about before they will offer you more time. But you always need to ask.
ask,
Ask, ask,
ask.
ask, ask for your delivered service logs.
They
They
must
must
give
give you a reason why you're not getting more why you're getting more not time or you're not unsupervised, because their goal is reunification, which it is not. But there's ways around it. I will put up the form for requesting for your delivered service logs. I will put up the
where
forms where
you
you can complain about your caseworker, where you can get more information. Um, I asked for more time for my daughter, and they said, "Oh, you haven't finished your therapy." And I said, "Yes, I did." "Oh, well, a judge needs to be the one to say that you can get more time." "No, it says in my paperwork that it's up to you guys. You can decide whether I get more time." So be very well versed in your court paperwork. Look at every nook and cranny. Look at your case plan. They are not allowed to um, miss visits. They can't just be like, "Oh, no visit today." They are still held to a certain standard, and you can take that to court and be like, they are interfering with the bonding of my child. So I will post. I haven't posted before, but I will try to figure out how to post them here now. But ask.
what are
The worst they're going to say is no, which is
heartbreaking,
heartbreaking. I know, but just ask. And no, the reason you're not getting it is because you pissed somebody off down the line,
which I
which
did,
I did,
And this is the
and I
kind of
still
thing.
do.
Yeah, this is the thing too that is a big reason that we want to start this nonprofit is it's because of information like this that so many families don't have. They don't know what they don't know what they can request. They don't know what information, where to get that information. They don't know who to ask. They don't know what services they have available to them. They don't know who to find as an attorney. They don't know what legal, what legal paperwork they can fill out themselves. And so that's why we want to provide these services. That's the second part of this, is that, like, first we want to provide the supervised the visitation monitoring, but we also want to provide the reunification coaching to be able to give people these kinds of answers to questions that they may not even know how to ask because they're just not familiar with the system.
My my one of my favorite stories that I like to tell, one of my most proud moments, was in the beginning of my case. So they don't tell you you have to do services. They don't tell you you have to do any of this stuff. It's up to you to figure it out. It's up to you to ask to see your children. Once your child is taken, they're supposed to let you see your child within X amount of hours, depending on when it was taken, when they were taken, why they were taken. So I had gone a week without getting any information, without my social worker calling me. And I said, "Okay, well, I'm going to call every hour until somebody calls me back and lets me know where my child is. I want to see my child." I went a whole day and I called every hour. The next day, I started calling every 30 minutes. And I said, "I'm going to call you every 30 minutes until somebody calls me back, because I miss my daughter and I want to see my daughter. And if I don't hear from somebody by tomorrow morning, I am going to call you every 15 minutes." And the next day, after a day of calling every hour and then a day of calling every 30 minutes, somebody finally called me back at 8 o'clock in the morning. They didn't want me calling every 15 minutes, because I called from private numbers, blocked numbers. I called reception. I didn't call the social worker directly because they could just ignore my phone call. I borrowed friends' phones. I called from different numbers. You are going to let me know when I'm going to see my child. I need to speak to my child. I need to speak to a supervisor. I don't know where my child is, and it's been, X amount of time. So, I got them to call me back by being persistent, and I wasn't rude. I just said, "Good morning, it's Erin again. Guess who?" But it's unbelievable that I had to take that type of approach just to see where my daughter was and when I could see her again. Thankfully, my daughter was with her dad and not in the system. And my heart goes out to you guys that have your children in the system, because honestly, I probably shouldn't say it, but fuck it, I'm going to say it anyways. If my daughter was put into foster care, I would have just taken her and ran. So we want to be able to make that process, that time in your lives easier. And the system that is set up to do that does not do that. And I know firsthand what it's like to have my daughter taken from me, and the sorrow is unbearable. And it's a lifelong trauma that I will be bearing, and they don't look in at the children. Brian, isn't there a new study out that's saying leaving a child in the abusive home is less traumatic than removing them? There's like a new
Oh,
study out.
Yeah, it's basically when it's what it basically shows is they look at um, kind of like lifetime success rate, in terms of like income and, like social functioning, mental health functioning. And what they basically found was that children who are left in the foster care system for and age out of the foster care system, never reuniting with their parents, actually, by and large, do worse in terms of mental health, in terms of social functioning, in terms of um, uh, income than those who are left with their families. And and a big possibility for that is that, and this is even including abusive families. These are families who are emotionally and physically abusive, and because and so there is this kind of growing movement within the mental health community to try and um, push back against the system that we currently have in place. In fact, there was another study that basically showed that families who were provided services, um, and the kids were left in the homes, um, they were more likely to complete their case plans, and the children tended to fare better long term than children who were placed in foster care. But even better than that was it cost less for the taxpayer to be able to keep to keep kids in their homes. And so that's why we're talking about this today, is we want to do everything we can to reunite you with your family, so that your kids can thrive and be successful. And we want to be able to provide you the resources that that you're going to need to be able to do that well. And that's one of the reasons that we're talking about it today, is because we are we just got our 501c3 status approved. We have been working to try and get our nonprofit status with the IRS approved. But what we're really needing right now is your help in getting us started. And so I want to see if I can put up here our website so that you can kind of see where what we've got going, um, and and so that you can also see like how you can help. So let me just share my screen here. Is that showing up for you there, Aaron?
Um,
yep, there
yep,
we go.
there we go.
Okay. So this is our new website. It's called transformation through reunification.org. And you can see here, it shows the different services that we're planning on offering. So this will be things like parenting classes, co-parenting classes, addiction recovery. Many of these things I can already provide through LifeSource, which is where I'm currently working. And so if you want to reach out to us and contact us on our page to connect with those, to be able to complete those classes, I'd be happy to speak with you. We're also planning to offer the life coaching services. Again, this is basically what Aaron is already able to provide, and so you can connect with us there. Counseling services, again, I can also still provide like individual therapy, family therapy. I am trained in something called parent-child interaction therapy, which is specifically designed to help families who are reuniting, so that the children can feel safe and secure in your care again. So if that is something that you feel like you want, if you need therapeutic visitations, you can reach out to me and see if we can work out that way. It talks about here our mission, the people who are going to be involved. We are still forming our board for our 501c3, but we do have Vince Davis is going to be coming on as our vice president of the board, and we have David James, who is a licensed marriage family therapist and works out of is it
Beverly Hills.
Beverly Hills, who's going to be who's going to be on as our as the president of our board,
And he's
and
my daddy.
and so, but we wanted to show you our website here because we, these are some of the statistics that are associated with families who are in the foster care system. This first one I think is so important to know because again, I've been hammering it already, but 51% of families dealing with foster care are domestic violence survivors whose children were taken away after fleeing the perpetrator. And the primary reason that I've seen for this is because they didn't contact them soon enough. And so their kids were taken away for failure to protect. And so those are some of the things that we want people to understand, is that this is this isn't a system right now that is designed to help children. It's a system that is unfortunately hurting families. Um, and so the other thing that we wanted to note is just that if there's any way that you can that you can help us with our mission, we would really appreciate it. There's a donation button right here on our webpage. You can sign up for our mailing list and we can provide you information with on what we're planning to do. One of the first things that I'm hoping that we can do is that is to go out and I want to be able to get the training to be a supervised monitor so that I can help parents whose children are currently in foster care. And once we get that going, then we can start to be able to provide those services as well. But our ultimate goal is to be able to have a facility in the San Bernardino Mountain region that will be able to travel to families who want to do supervised visitations um, out in the field somewhere. So like going to a park, going to the movies, being able to go to the mall together, things like that. We want to be able to offer them those opportunities. But we also want to be able to provide families the opportunity to come to our facility and be able to have those supervised visitations and have some of those resources that maybe you don't have because you've lost your home, you've lost your job, you've lost the money that you would have been able to provide, been able to use to do things like, you know, bring your children toys and things like that. And we also want to be able to try and pair up with other nonprofits who can provide some of those kinds of services. One that I've been talking with right now is a place called Warrior for Children, who provides things like diapers, formula, toys, and other resources that families need when whose children are currently in the foster care system, and particularly ones who are impoverished. And so, if there's any way that you can help us out, it doesn't even have to be a lot of money. It can be just like $5. But if there's any way that you can help us with this with our mission, we would really appreciate it because our goal is to be able to start to provide, as Aaron mentioned, those supervised visitations, those mental health services, reunification coaching to families who just can't afford it right now because they are homeless, because they are in poverty.
So I actually lost my home trying to pay to see my daughter, to pay for visits. And that's what made me stop and say, no, 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 no. Like I literally, I couldn't pay my rent and pay the 16 or $1,800 a month it would cost to see my child, on top of trying to figure out where to go, what to do with your child, because that is all written down and it's all used against you if you say one thing, put one toe out of line. And that's why I wanted to get an actual building where we could have Christmas parties and Santa can come and you can have a holiday with your child and not in a dirty, disgusting CPS office. You can play with your children, you can cook food and paint and sing and dance and not feel like um, if your child has a meltdown, that you are going to lose your kid forever. Um, like Brian has said, they do not take into account when children misbehave in the office. You don't even get to go to a room that's fun. They put you literally in an office. I have a client whose child was living in the fucking CPS office for 4 months, sleeping on the ground in the office. You don't how are you supposed to keep your bond with your child when someone is looking over your shoulder, writing everything down? And if your child has a meltdown or wants a toy, um, I remember my daughter asked me for something, and I said, "No, honey, I can't buy that for you right now. I need to buy groceries." And that was used against me because my daughter wanted to bring her piggy bank to mommy and say, "Oh, here, mommy, here's my piggy bank. We can buy groceries." Well, that's not what it was. I wasn't telling my daughter I was living in poverty. I said, "No, we can't buy a toy because we have to buy groceries." But it was taken in a different manner. And I want to do everything that I possibly can to help somebody keep their bond with their child. Like I said over and over and over, this is the worst thing that I've ever been through in my entire life. I literally did nothing wrong. And the shame kept me quiet for a long time, and I don't want you guys to be quiet. Don't put that shame down. Don't be embarrassed. Ask for help. We're asking for your help so we can help you. But I know what it's like. And when you don't have a facility to go to, you have to make up a visit. So there was times I didn't know what to do with my child, so we sat in my car and I turned it into like a drive-in movie theater, and I made dinner and I brought it down in Tupperware, and I made popcorn, and I put up the computer and we sat in the back seat and watched a movie, and I got to cuddle with my daughter for 2 hours. I thought it was sweet and she had a good time. But it was used against me. They said, "Oh, we don't want to ever do that again because there was a shooting over at the Target around the corner, so that place is unsafe." Well, what the fuck? I'm sorry there was a shooting 2 weeks ago, had nothing to do with me. So what am I supposed to do now? Because they wouldn't drive up the mountain to where we were for some reason. I was going to pay through the nose even for that, and they wouldn't do it. So that's why it was important, and still is important for me, for us to have a facility so you can come and you can have a picnic outside, you can cook with your children, you have somewhere to go. You don't have to constantly think, "Oh my God, where am I going to go? If I take this person here, it's going to cost me. I have to pay for the monitor to get in. I have to pay for the monitor to eat food. I have to pay for this. I have to pay for that." I didn't want that. I mean, it was already hard enough. So that's why, to me, having a facility is so important. So all you have to do is bring stuff for you and your kid to do. And if you don't know how to do that, I can help you. I can tailor your visits to your child's age. We can do grandparent visits. I have boxes that I'm working on it's like a visit in a box for grandparents that want to see their children and don't know what to do. I got you covered. But I my goal is to help as many people as I can keep their bond with their child without losing their home, without losing their job or losing their car. It is bad enough that you've lost your child, even if you are guilty of something. Even if you're guilty of something, you have gone through and you have done what you were supposed to do. You should not be continued to be punished forever, and your children should not be kept from you. There's no kind of forgiveness in this, and I cannot stress the pain that I still feel in being in separation with my child, and then the added trauma of all the things that you have to do to hopefully get your child back. And so that's what we want to do, is help facilitate that, help make that easier on you. Um, Nobody told me I had to take classes and I had to do this and I had to do that. Nothing. I figured it out on my own, and I was good at it. And I've helped 150 families. I'm now a court ordered parental advocate. I'm a court ordered advocate. I'm a court ordered expert. I've testified in 6 states. I've testified in Wales. I've testified in London. But I see a need here in our home, in my backyard here in California, that I can start with. And no parent should have to be away from their children the way they are, and no parent should have to beg and pay to see their children. And unfortunately, I
I
am not independently wealthy and I can't pay for supervised visitations for everybody, but I can start the charity. I can start here. And if you can't donate, that's fine. You can donate your time. We can need volunteers. We need clothes, diapers, all that kind of thing. Um,
we
we
even
even
need.
need,
I
I
know
know
people
people
need
need
someone.
someone to talk to. You need a friend, another parent going through that. There's we have a lot of resources, and there's a lot of spaces that we have that we are happy to reach out and but we also need your guys' help. Volunteering time, money, anything, diapers, clothes. Um, I help dress parents for court because you go to court and they do not know the difference between poverty and child abuse. So you are losing your child because you live in poverty, which is not a reason to take your children. But for some reason, the county doesn't see the difference in being poor and child abuse. So I help parents get ready for court, present themselves for court, dressed. If you have old business suits, things like that, that you can make a parent feel like a person again, walking into a courtroom instead of feeling like a piece of shit, you know, then that's that's a void that you can help us with.
And I think too, to kind of just add on that idea of like poverty, like one of the things that has been the biggest struggle for me as a therapist, from just like both a financial and a conscience level, is many of the families that I'm working with, they have lost their home. Like we are doing sessions, like in the car, because that's the only place they have that's private and safe, and they can't drive from LA or Sacramento or whatever to come into the office and be able to do sessions. So we do them on the phone while they're in their car, and a lot of times they're freezing because it's cold, or they're sweltering because it's the summer. And one of the things that happens so frequently is that when they get to that level, they can't afford to do services anymore, and so they just kind of drop off, and it breaks my heart, and I unfortunately I have to charge for those services, but I don't, I want to try and get them that help. And so that's one of the reasons that we're doing this as well, is I want to be able to be to be able to offer those services for free to the families who are struggling the most, because it just breaks my heart that you get to that level and you can't do services anymore. And I want to be able to be there for those families, because they're the ones who struggle the most going through this. They're the ones who feel the most alone because they just don't have anywhere to go. And I want that to stop.
And
And
we
we
can't.
can't
And
unless we change legislation. We need to get out and vote, and we need to vote locally. But until that happens, this is the way that I can contribute, the way that I can help. I cannot, in good conscience, sit back and say, okay, well, I'm out of dependency court, so fuck the lady that was next to me. No, I can't. The pain of losing my daughter will never ever go away. It never gets easier. It manageable maybe, but I still cannot look at a little girl and her mom, because I'm now in family court fighting a whole different monster. And like I said, I left dependency court with my custody intact, 50-50, went to family court, and the judge thought my job was odd and weird. So he put me on supervised visits where I had to pay to see my daughter. So I filed complaint with the judicial board, and I'm going through the motions, and there's nothing else that I can do other than what I'm doing for myself. But in the meantime, each person that I help reunite with their daughter, hopefully brings me closer to my daughter. It doesn't get easier, especially if you're alone. And this is designed to keep you isolated. And we can't have that. So you're not alone. And don't feel shame, because this can happen to anybody. It happens to every all walks of life. It doesn't matter who you are, where you live, who you know, how much money you have. If they get a notion to take away your child, it's going to happen. Now, don't open the door and don't open your mouth. The worst thing I did was let them in. So if they come to your door, fuck them. Shut the door. Don't answer them. They don't have to. You don't have to let them in. If you have a public defender, we can help you redirect your public defender and help you, because they're people too, and they have huge caseloads. And some of the best attorneys I've ever met are public defenders. The woman that saved my daughter, Miss Guzman, I love you, is one of the best attorneys I've ever met. And her and I bumped heads in the beginning. And it was just a matter of redirecting and representing my case and getting her back on board. Because honestly, we are just a number in the courtroom. We can help you with that. We can help you redirect your public defender. We can, I call it making account deposits in your CPS account. So if you take classes with me or you take classes with Brian, I've written letters of recommendation that have been accepted in the court system all across the country. And it just shows that you are going above and beyond to do what you need to do to get your children. That's another resource that we offer, is not just support, but support. You're not alone.
And I wanted to just respond to something that that was happening in the chat. Sebastian was talking about trying to bring down the CPS and the family court system, and I think that is something that we want to, that we absolutely understand is a problem. And as a 501c3, unfortunately we are not allowed to lobby or or fight for certain legislation like that. It is absolutely a conversation that is happening and needs to happen more, and who knows, in the future maybe we'll start a 501c4, where we can do something like that. But for the moment, this is what we want to be able to offer, because this is the system we have, and we don't want families who are stuck in this system to um, to be without anything, to be without any resources, to be without somebody there who cares. And so right now we're starting in the California area. Unfortunately, I'm only licensed in California, so I can only see clients who are in the state of California. But who knows what the future will be? Maybe we will be able to do, to um, provide those services out of state. Maybe we will in the future be able to start a nonprofit which does, provide education and information to legislators who can change the current law and do something to affect the way things are. But for right now, this is where we're hoping that we can start, and we're hoping that you can join us in this journey. Again, please feel free to check out our website. If you can, you know, drop a few dollars in the donate section. If you know people who would be willing to contribute to us, please send them this video or send them the link to our page, and we'll see where we can go.
Sebastian, I have a licensed investigator. We have one on staff, so email us, and maybe we can go from there. So we do have private investigators, we have notaries, we have process servers, all of that stuff. So we are email us if that you need any of those services. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Brian. I just saw the comment. I forgot to mention Art. So Art Bustamante is a very good friend of ours. He's on he's on our side. He agrees with us. He does a lot of work for families, a lot of investigation. So I
Will
will
link
link
his
his
website,
website.
but
But
And check out our
have
webpage too, because
yes.
I saw you wanted us to see if we could contact you back there, Sebastian. Just go to the website, find our email address there. It's I believe it's help.reunification@gmail.com, but check the website. I know it's on there. It's very new, so we will do our best to respond and see if we can help you with your situation. So. Um,
And if you need to get hold of me, Erin Carranza 247 at gmail.com. I am not bound by California state law licensing. I can help any parent in reunification anywhere in the world. Like I said before, I have testified in 6 states now and
in
in
Wales,
Wales,
London,
London, and
and
Central America. So if you need help in supervised visitation and reunification, um, I'm not giving you legal advice, but reunification is universal and keeping your bond is universal. So I can help you that way via Zoom. I've actually traveled to other states to testify for parents on their behalf if they've done classes with me. So Erin Carranza 247 at gmail.com. Or obviously here on Facebook. I have a TikTok and an Instagram. I'm learning how to use that, showing my age here, but the best way is through email. And I will do everything in my power to help you. And if I cannot help you, I can at least point you in the right direction. And thank you guys for your time and your comments. And please like and share this video and our website so we can continue to help as many parents that are suffering as we can.
All right. And yes, feel free to reach out to me as well. You can find me on Psychology Today. You can contact me at the number on the screen, 951-289-0478. Or as we mentioned several times, you can also go to our new webpage, www.transformationthroughreunification.org, and you can reach out to us there. So thank you very much for listening to us today, and we really hope you will join us on this journey. Take care.
good night.